Hello and welcome to Into the Aether. It's a low-key video game podcast. And my name is Brendon Bigley.
I'm Stephen Hilger.
We got two big, gigantic announcements right at the top. Number one.
I'm so excited.
Dragon Age 11S, Echoes of an Elusive Age, Definitive Edition for the Nintendo Switch is now available on the Xbox via Game Pass.
Dragon Quest, you mean?
Did I say Dragon Age?
You did. Yeah, I do that constantly. It's impossible to not mess. You want to try it again?
AJ, bleep noise. We got two huge announcements. Number one,
Double Dragon 11S.
Yeah. Oh my God, Double Dragon. Didn't they just make a new Double Dragon?
There was a new Streets of Rage. Similar, yeah. Which is
Streets
great.
of Rage 11S. Echoes of an Elusive Age. Anyway, Dragon Quest 11's out on Game Pass. I just wanted to say that. The more I play that, the more it becomes my favorite game of all time. Just want you to go check it out if you haven't and you have the ability to play it on Game Pass. I think it's going to be on PC Game Pass also, which is pretty cool. So if you have a PC, you can also check it out.
I'm excited to play it on Game Pass on the Series S because the PS4 version, as I've talked about, is like limited in some ways, especially the soundtrack. Yeah. So it'll be cool to like get the full
from the PSN store also. They removed the old version from every store that was available for you. You can only get S now.
So I have like a PT version of it, basically.
Yeah.
It's the scarier version, the scarier cut.
Did I tell you this? You can't play PT on the PS5.
Oh, really?
Even if you it carries it over. PS4? Like the actual, like the software will like transfer from your PS4 to your PS5, but you can't open it.
It's cursed.
Yeah.
I love
it's really
that.
upsetting. I was really bummed about it. I guess I could. Imagine if I kept my PS4 just to play PT.
Why not?
I guess I could. Anyway, so that's our first big announcement.
Full Halloween. Put spiderwebs on it. A weird journal that's like Victorian.
Oh my god! How funny would that be? Yeah. If I just like did it up as if it was like an item you would find in a Resident Evil or a Silent Hill game, and just like put it in like a weird chest next to a typewriter.
Yeah, amazing.
So that's our first big announcement, is that I'm about to put my PS4 in a chest next to a typewriter to cover it in either fake cobwebs or real ones if I can get enough spiders.
Yeah, live a little. Get some real spiders.
You know me, Brendon Bigley, famous spider lover. The second actual announcement. We don't very frequently talk about the fact that we are on a podcast network currently because there's only one show that's active on the podcast network, which, is it a network if it's only one show? Questions abound. But we're part of a podcast network that's called TWG, which is The Worst Garbage is the name of it. You can find the website at theworstgarbage.online. That link maybe is in the show notes. I don't even remember. But for those of you astute listeners, it is mentioned at the end of every episode via like a little stinger. So I guess listen for it this time. But anyway, there was a show on there for a long time that was called No Script at All. It was a recap podcast that I did with my good friend Andrea about Terrace House, which was a Japanese reality show. You can go listen to it. It's all still available. You can go check it out. That show ended, both the actual TV show and the podcast at the same time, which was kind of a bummer. But that pretty much left just the Aether as the only show that was available on the network. We have recently added a new show, which is really exciting. I'm really excited about it.
I'm excited too.
Stephen is, I think, equally excited. Yeah. It's called 11 Again.
I'm also excited.
It's called 11 Again. Yeah, it's really good. It's by Percy of Berlin. It's a show about like revisiting the things that we like loved and were obsessed with when we were, 11 or 12 or that age. I don't know about you, dear listener, but I definitely had a bunch of things that I would like watch over and over and over and over again, or read over and over and over and over again at that age, and just like could not stop ingesting that sweet content. So that's what the show is about. It's pretty much like interviewing people about the thing that they were obsessed with, talking to them about what they remember about it, if they think it was like a formative experience or not, and then actually going and revisiting that thing, and then talking again after revisiting it about, their preconceived notions and like kind of answering the questions from the first bit and seeing like what they've pulled from that thing after revisiting it. It's a really cool format. It's a really good show.
It's great.
Totally fits the vibe of the network. I would say Stephen and I have both been on it. You did an episode about Matilda recently. I did an episode about Hey Arnold.
Perfect.
It was awesome. It's really good. It's a really good show. So you can check that out at 11again.online.
It's really wonderful. I mean, Percy does a great job and all the guests are awesome, even us. But What I'll add to that too is that like what's really brilliant about the formula is it's not limited to just like a piece of media, but maybe it's like a topic or an event. Like the exploration of the past in all ways is like really expertly done. So definitely give it a listen. It's an incredible show.
Yeah. One thing I really appreciated about it also is like it's not just people our age, you know, it's not just like a 90s throwback show. Like there are people from like all age groups represented here. So like what were you obsessed with in the 60s when you were 11, you know, is a really interesting question. You know, like her younger brother, I think, is going to be on a future episode, who is, I think, 5 or 6 years younger than she is. So his things are like Pokemon Red and Blue, or sorry, the remakes, Fire Red and Leaf Green, you know, like the remakes of the original Pokemon games are like the thing, stuff like that. I think it's an incredible show and an incredible idea for a show. And it's really great. So you can go check that out, 11again.online.
Very excited to have 11 Again on the network. We're growing again, baby.
Growing again. Yeah. It's worth mentioning also, I mean, we don't talk about it a lot, but like there are other things that we're like trying to add to the network as well. Some like potential spin-offs from this podcast are in the works, which is interesting. I'm working on like a video show, which, is that a podcast? Who knows? But is another thing. Steven has an idea that I'm very excited about, and we'll see how that goes. I don't know. There's just like a lot going on. So yeah, I don't know. We grow a little bit every year, I think. And I think next year is looking pretty bright so far. So
yeah, I feel like in retrospect, this year has been probably our biggest yet for Into the Aether. Like it's the first year we've had guests on, we've like kind of been expanding what we cover as well. I wouldn't be surprised if next year is all about the network in terms of the growth happening there, and like, I mean, we'll always grow and experiment with this show, but I think that's kind of where the intention is.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Stay tuned there. It's theworstgarbage.online. You can go check it out, see links to 11 Again. And there's a little question mark button on that website, which will lead you to tests, which is fun as well. So you can hear what we're working on.
Is that where Out of the Nether is?
Yeah, it is actually.
Oh yeah. I love that.
Yeah, we did. I did one like fucked up episode that was like an opposite day spin-off of this podcast called Out of the Nether with Andrea. That was, I think, about reviewing. It was about reviewing candy, about reviewing cursed
silly
candy
snacks.
objects.
Yeah.
Silliest snacks. That's what it was.
That's like the Masigno episode of our lineup. It's like a virus. It's great. I love you and Andrea, but it's like, yeah, you introduced that episode as a shitpost that maybe shouldn't exist.
Yeah, well, that's what we're all about here at TWG. Honestly, like to be like completely candid about it, and not getting too into like the like podcasty like behind the scenes side of it, but like just to mention a little more, the network has always existed in my mind as like a way to just like try out creative ideas, kind of free from the burden of like needing to put any kind of like money into the front end. Like it doesn't cost anything we've already bought the equipment. Hosting is now free because of things like Anchor, so we can just try things and see if they work and see how everybody responds, which is another reason that we have the Discord, which you can find the link to at theworstgarbage.online. But if you join the Discord, that's where we're like testing stuff out, and it's definitely been happening a little less frequently recently as we've like had our attention pulled elsewhere. But it's a big thing I want to get back into next year, because I have a list of podcast ideas that is like about 20 ideas deep, and I would like to try them. So I guess just stay tuned for that.
Yeah, exciting. All I to say, 11 Again, very much worth your time and exciting to add it to the network.
Yeah, it's really good. Go check it out.
Cool. So Brendon, I hear whispers that you're like all about Souls games these days. You're like, I want to challenge, baby.
Yeah.
I want to sweat. I want to cry. I want to sit by a fireplace.
I don't know what's happening to me at the moment with this, but I sure have been playing like every Souls game simultaneously. It started off as me playing Demon Souls because it had just come out and the PS5 had just come out, and then kind of evolved into me saying like, okay, where does Demon Souls fit into, I would say, like the larger landscape of FromSoft Souls stuff? And I started playing Dark Souls 3 and Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 1, and replayed a little bit of Bloodborne and started playing Sekiro again, and just like trying to kind of ingest all of it and see like, okay, how does Demon Souls fit in here? Like partially for the Game of the Year episode and just seeing like how I think it's going to rank. amongst my own top 10, but also just how I think it fares against everything else. What I'll say about it, I guess, just like on the top level, is that it looks really nice. It's a nice looking video game. But outside of that, I think I have a lot of issues with the things that are happening in Demon Souls mechanically, and they've sanded a lot of those edges off in Dark Souls and everything else going forward from there.
Yeah.
That's not to say there aren't some like really novel things I think are important and good about Demon Souls. I think the ability to go to any level at any time is really cool. Once you beat the first boss, you unlock what people colloquially refer to as like World 2-1, World 3-1, 4-1, and 5-1 all at the same time, so you can go visit them and either like farm for souls or get items from like the late game and bring them back to the early game, things like that. And it's not only like a thing you can do, but it's a thing that it's encouraged that you do, because it just makes the game easier in some instances. So yeah, I don't know, Demon Souls is really interesting. I'm enjoying it a lot. But just like wanted to check that stuff out. And then weirdly enough, alongside of that, I've also been playing a lot of Souls-likes simultaneously, which started with me replaying or starting from the beginning Jedi Fallen Order, which is like trying to do some really interesting stuff. That's on Game Pass. I'm playing through Hollow Knight every morning on our Twitch channel at the moment, which I'm almost done with, which is wild. I am really at the end game. I'm just kind of like cleaning stuff up. So I've almost replayed through that entire game, which has been a kind of wild thing. I started playing Chronos Before the Ashes, which I'm going to talk about a little bit, and I started playing Ashen, which I'm also going to talk about for a little bit. But I think the main takeaway that I've had over the past like couple of weeks of either like revisiting these games or checking out this new stuff, or new to me at least, has just been like this idea or this pushback against Souls likes as a genre, and like what is the difference between it becoming its own genre and people just like lifting aspects of the Souls games and like not really doing anything too exciting with them. You and I have like a real soft spot for a game called Remnant from the Ashes, which is a like multiplayer focused, which is worth noting. It's a multiplayer focused Souls-like that focuses on gunplay more than it does on like sword and shield. So you have guns and ammo and stuff like that, but you're fighting like big, Cthulhu-esque beasts. And I don't actually want to say too much about that game for fear of like spoiling what is maybe one of the wildest like visual and aesthetic experiences you can have. It's a great game. I think it's also on Game Pass, actually, now that I think about it. So like go play Remnant if you haven't. Steven and I played through it and loved it. You can actually, I think, go to our YouTube and there's a bunch of like videos of us playing it together. But that game is really, really cool. And I think it's doing a lot of things that you and I kind of want from a game that's inspired by a Souls-like in a lot of instances. Remnant is a game that Steven and I love like pretty dearly. I think because of the multiplayer element, like for all the things that I think it lifts from Souls-likes without really like asking why it's doing that, which I think are like the kind of more bummer sides of that game, it really lifts itself up based on the ability to play with others. It is so fun to explore that game with a friend. It's also doing a lot of really interesting stuff where it's like generating the world every time you play it. So it's almost like a roguelike in that way, which is kind of cool. So every time you start the game, it'll like readjust the different worlds in a different order and kind of shuffle things around. So you'll have like different plot beats than your friend. You'll have different items that you're finding than your friend. And that's kind of another incentive to bring someone else into your world so you can kind of like explore more possibilities of more possible areas. Remnant's a really cool thing and I really liked it. There is a prequel to Remnant that just came out recently for consoles. It's called Chronos, or it was originally called Chronos in 2016 when it came out for the Oculus Rift. It was an Oculus Rift exclusive. They have taken that game and then ported it to console. So it's available now, I think, for Switch, Xbox, maybe PC also, and the PlayStations 4 and 5. But now it's called
4 and 5.
PlayStation Series 4 and 5. Yes.
Yeah.
The game is now called Chronos Before the Ashes and is just like a straight port of the Oculus game. It seems like to consoles. I have been playing it because I loved Remnant and I wanted to check out Chronos. And I'll say this much right off the bat is like it has a lot of the things I didn't like about Remnant and almost none of the stuff that I did like about Remnant, which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
But playing through it has really kind of made me ask this question about what is a Souls game or what is a Souls-like game and what is like just kind of copy and pasting a bunch of elements from Souls games without really any intentionality. And this game while on the surface seems to be trying to do some things to differentiate itself, I think a lot of them don't land in a way that I find to be a bummer. I'm not going to go too into it because like that's not really what the show is about. It's not about like dunking on stuff, but I do think it's worth touching on some of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you can be critical in the guise of a constructive conversation. You know, you're not like
absolutely
8 reasons why this game's stinky.
You know, like you're actually being thoughtful.
That's the thing. I actually do recommend that some people play this game if some of the stuff I'm about to talk about sounds appealing, which it will be to some people. When this game came out for the Oculus, people really liked it. It was really well received. I think partially because like, oh my God, it's an actual full-scale game that you can play on the Oculus Rift that was like made for Oculus and like is good. But outside of that, there are certain elements that I think really work. Some of the elements that don't work as much are like you're traveling between essentially bonfires. I don't know why that's a thing that has to be in every Souls-like game. It has very similar combat to Souls games, but like doesn't feel as tight.
Yeah.
And more importantly, I think it's like weirdly easy to like cheese every enemy that you're fighting by just doing a heavy attack over and over again. If you keep doing heavy attacks, you just like stun lock everyone, which is kind of a weird experience to just like be able to fly through every area without really any like actual combat happening. You're just like hitting R2 over and over and over again. There are some things that do work about it though. They're like the art direction of this game is really cool. It reminds me a lot of Remnant. You're exploring areas that are like completely wild. You start off in just like in Remnant, you start off in like kind of the old world, right? It's this Earth like post-apocalypse, and you're like traversing these old like research facilities and stuff to find these like traveling teleport stones so you can go into like alternate dimensions and check other stuff out. And the first area you go into is like this world of rock people that is like really intricately designed and just absolutely gorgeous and has a lore all its own that you can explore and check out, and like some really interesting bosses and stuff. And when you're done with that world, you move on to like a forest world that has kind of like centaurs and stuff. So like it's really switching between genres in a way that I appreciate and is exactly what I loved about Remnant. But where it kind of falls flat is that the game is so focused on puzzle elements, which is not a thing I was expecting. When I started experiencing it, I was like, this is kind of cool. I'm kind of into this. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on with you find an item and you can like combine items in your inventory to like make certain things. So like if you find a handle and like a piece of metal and it looks like they fit together, you can try and combine them and like, oh wow, you have a crank, but where does the crank go? And then you have to find the place where the crank goes. Like that kind of stuff is cool. Where I'm starting to bump against it is like every door I find is locked. Every pathway I go down has a dead end because there's an item that I don't have. It's getting to the point where like almost like Hollow Knight, I have to like go re-explore every single pathway to see which one I actually have the item for or which one I can actually get through, which is like really frustrating when you move as slowly as you do and the world isn't as exciting once you've cleared out all the enemies and there's like really no combat to be had or no challenge to be had. It's literally just like going down every hallway over and over again. Where the game succeeds though is like in the wilder moments. Like there's this big mirror that I found that has like these glyphs on top of it, and I could change all the glyphs and like try going through the mirror. Like you can walk through the mirror and it takes you to different places depending on what glyphs you put in what order. And there was this one instance in which I was going through this like big kind of abandoned library, and I looked into one of the shelves and I saw a little tiny version of the mirror with some glyphs on it. So I ran back to the mirror and I changed the glyphs to match the one on the little tiny mirror, and I ended up in the bookshelf, and I was like, you know, the size, I was tiny. I was a little tiny guy running through fighting little toy versions of all the big enemies that I would fight in the normal area. And like that stuff is really cool. It's the exact stuff that like made Remnant rock. But unfortunately, it's just like so bogged down by like the combat not really being up to snuff and the puzzle elements. I think like being thought out, but not in a way that's like fun for the player. Like I don't ever feel smart in this game because I figured out how to do something. I only progress because I've tried literally everything I possibly could.
It's like a 90s point and click logic. Yeah.
The big thing I think that it's the one bullet point that they mention when you look at like the store page is that every time you die, you age up a year, which is really bizarre. So you start off as an 18-year-old, and then every time you die, you age up a year. When you're playing this game, every time you hit a decade, so like if you die twice, you hit 20 years old. Every time you hit a decade, they present you with 3 abilities or like three kind of like attribute points that you can throw in. That'll be things like, I don't know, you gain more experience now, you know, because you're learning from your deaths more. So from your age 20 on, you gain more experience, or you just have more base health, or you have more base strength, things like that. on top of that, you're getting experience for every enemy that you're killing. And that experience, just kind of like Dark Souls in a way, allows you to level up your attribute points. But those attribute points are boiled down to 4, which I really, really appreciate. It's just health, strength, dexterity, and I think arcane is the last one. So instead of this big Excel spreadsheet of nonsense that happens in the FromSoft stuff where like you have to like find what weapon you want to be using and what like stat scales with that weapon and things like that. It's like, no. It's very simple. Just one of these 4. So you can level them up kind of on a whim at any point. The thing is, though, is that as you age up, your ability to make use of those stats lessens. So as you get older, your arcane stat becomes more important and your health and strength and dexterity start to decrease. So by the end of the game, I guess, hypothetically, you'll just be like a full magic build and you'll just be using magic spells all the time. Yeah. Which is, I guess, an interesting idea. But where I'm bumping up against it, honestly, is this like, I went into this game, started to play it, and said to myself, this is like the best entry-level Souls game. They have sanded off every edge possible. If you're a person who's been interested in this kind of game for a long time, but were like afraid or like daunted by the difficulty, and just thought that it would be too frustrating, this game is so for you. I think it's really great. Even at the beginning, the first thing they ask you is, do you want to play on casual, normal, or hardcore difficulty? There's an actual difficulty slider here, which I think is great. I'm playing on normal, which has been fine so far. But you could play on casual if you want and just experience the story and the puzzle solving and all that kind of stuff and probably have a pretty good time. Where I almost wanted to test this because I was so curious, but where I'm bumping up against it is like, what happens when you like continue to age? Like, do you just die at a certain point? Like, is there an if you have such a hard time with the combat in this game that you become like age 100, does your character just die? And if that happens, you have to start from the beginning. Like, how does that work? I have literally no idea.
Wow.
So I guess that's kind of my like one big caveat about the aging system is like, while it's interesting to have an evolving build over time, and it is weird how like as your character gets older, like I'm playing as like a male presenting character, like they have more facial hair as they continue to get older and stuff. Like they start to actually look older. It's really interesting, but I just like find it to be off-putting at times. And I don't know. It
sounds more interesting conceptually than an execution.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to have played Remnant and then go back and play this thing because it's clear that they've like learned a lot from releasing this thing, and that Remnant is like really what they should have made first. So I'm excited for Remnant 2 because that's like on the horizon, but I think this game does land more in where I was curious to get your take on, but I think more in your realm of like, this is a game that's just like borrowing a lot from Souls and not doing enough new to like really stand on its own.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to kind of go a little bit further into that if you don't mind. So I'm going to Trekkie our own show again, but I think actually a really good episode where you and I talk about like the Souls games in general and what they do well is Sekiro Love and Daunt, which is like when Sekiro just came out, and we kind of talked about like our experience with the FromSoft games leading up to it. But something I've been thinking about as you and I have been talking off the show about the Souls-like genre in general and like where Demon Souls fits in the FromSoft catalog is like, I kind of took a step back and I was like, what is the reason these games are so popular? You know, like I was really trying to figure out, and it's not really something you can answer because everyone has their own taste. But I was thinking about when Dark Souls 1 came out, and I feel like Dark Souls 1 especially is sort of this cosmic response to mainstream game design at the time. I think it was very much the norm to have a game that was very linear, that was very, here's where to go next to progress the plot, here's what you need to do. And there's nothing wrong about that. Honestly, these days I cherish that. I think linear became a bad word in 2010 because the open world genre was getting so big.
Yeah.
And I think that there's kind of this like cosmic event in 2011 where Skyrim and Dark Souls both came out. And Skyrim is a game that will always tell you what to do and where to go, but you can do anything. You know, it's very much like you can play this game however you want and you'll be rewarded for it. Dark Souls, ironically, is a linear, you need to do this in order to progress game in the guise of an open world game. And I think the reason people were so impressed by it when it came out and it became this kind of magical event that people have been trying to capture since is that it's a game where the discovery of what to do is completely organic. And that very delicate design of like, we don't want it to feel like a puzzle where you just have tried everything and then suddenly one thing works and you feel frustrated, but actually a eureka moment where you've either learned a certain skill or a certain style of play that allows you to progress.
Right. And there's also the whole community end in that game, which I think is so important, like the ability to write notes on the ground and stuff. And like players either leading you to success or your doom, just like for fun, is such a huge aspect of those games, I think. But on top of that, there's this community building element outside of the game of like, you should go on the internet and Google things. You should read walkthroughs. You should read like game facts. It kind of harkens back to this like nostalgic era of RPGs from like PS1 and N64 days, which I think is really interesting as well. It feels a lot of times mechanically, or sorry, from a design standpoint, like a PS1 game that just like magically came out on the next generation after that.
I think that's apt. Yeah. And I think too, in terms of the story, is like, just like the mechanics are like kind of up to you to figure out. And there's like a very soft sense of direction. Same with the story and the atmosphere. So I think there's something really empowering, especially for the first time, having a game that is brave enough in its design to let you figure it out.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I like about those games. It's not that it's excruciatingly difficult. It's not that things are named cryptically or that the menu goes, whoa, when you select something, or that there's fog. I am baffled by the fact that someone can play Dark Souls and be like, I'm so inspired by this. I want to make a game where you roll a lot and there's fog. It's like, why is that? Why are those the two? And that's where I bump up against it. Because I think like it has now become popular enough that you can say your game is a Souls-like and there will be interest in it. And that's great. I think like the fact that a game that was this brave in its design, that was not mainstream in any way, has become mainstream is interesting. And I do think that the mainline FromSoft games have been further experimenting with the formula. Like Sekiro, weirdly, is way more mainstream in a lot of its design, which was experimental for that series to do. You know, Sekiro was like, what if we actually had a story that was happening while you were playing? What if we were a little bit kinder with like the checkpoints in the game? So even if it has this level of difficulty that is tough, like the game is really training you to play and giving you a chance to fail. Whereas maybe in Dark Souls or Demon Souls, there was more of the like esoteric, I have to now walk 3 miles to get back to where I got my ass kicked.
Yeah.
You know, in Sekiro, like pretty much every boss, with a few exceptions, has a checkpoint right before it. So I think that like, I love that a lot of game designers want to take what that series has done well and use that as like the foundation of their game. Hollow Knight is a great example of a Souls-like that is very much its own thing. And it's because that game is taking from so many different genres and doing its own twist on them that it doesn't feel derivative. You know, it's a Metroidvania with Souls-like elements. And I think Metroidvania is a good genre to bring up. It's a genre named after 2 games. So in that it shares kind of like the laser focus of a Souls-like, but you can play a lot of Metroidvanias that don't feel like they're copied and pasted from each other, because what is that genre if not just a 2D overworld? And what can you do within that? The possibilities are endless.
Right. It's literally just about exploring a map, backtracking a little bit to use new abilities that you found to find and access new areas. And the amount of permutations of that we've seen that are successful, you know, outside of just Metroid and Castlevania. Incredible games like Axiom Verge or Ori, which you're playing the new one. Things like that have like really kind of nailed that, and I think Hollow Knight literally nails it in a lot of instances.
Nice.
But also pulls the best parts of the Souls-like genre into it, right? That game, the focus in the development of Hollow Knight was on creating a world that's like fun and satisfying to get lost in and to explore, which is why you don't mind backtracking. It's why you don't mind going around and exploring and talking to Cornifer and buying the map from him. So finally you can have an idea of where you are in this gigantic place that is just filled with like little bits of like satisfying lore and learning more about where you are and where you, the player, came from. That game just kind of like takes, I think, the Metroidvania stuff to its logical conclusion by making the place so difficult to traverse at times that you kind of like need the ability to like run through the same area over and over and over again, so you can paint like a mental picture of what it is. You have to learn the ins and outs of that for yourself. I'm not even talking about like the combat side of it. I just mean the actual exploration of the world and your own mastery of it comes from you being there as much as you possibly can and running through the same passageways over and over again until you know intuitively, okay, Fog Canyon connects to Queen's Gardens through this way, and I need to get to Fog Canyon or something like that.
The setting feels very alive as well. You know, I mean, I think like a small example, it's a small spoiler, but it happens early on, is when you go to the Mantis Lord hideout. Right away, the Manti are like enemies that are clearly more sentient. Like usually you'll come across a bug that has like a mushroom on its head and it's like, huh? You know, and you're like, okay, this is maybe an echo of their former self. But when you meet the Manti, they're like agile and they're like knights, basically.
Yeah.
And when you beat the Mantis Lords, when you go back there, they all bow to you.
Right.
It's like little stuff like that I think the Souls games kind of do, that Hollow Knight went all in on. Like the ensemble of NPCs and the rewards for going back to characters are so much greater in Hollow Knight. And then actually by extension, Sekiro as well. Like that to me is what I like about the series. And you can always, like, it's subjective what you pull from Dark Souls. I just have to roll my eyes on when people think it's the fireplaces and the fog. Like, that is so not what you should be taking from this, you know? And it just feels like, I don't know, I don't want to mock it too much, because I think at a certain point, all inspiration begins as like literally copying things, even if it's subconscious. But, you know, because like Dark Souls is kind of like trendy to ape now, it's just frustrating that like the things that should be influential, such as like an ensemble that you gradually get to learn over time, a setting that you endear yourself to that changes, you know, a loose sense of direction that rewards you for finally figuring it out and not rolling a lot. Like,
right. Yeah, I think that's a really good way to distill it, I think. You know, if the Souls franchise, for the most part, is about persistence in combat, what Hollow Knight does so well is that it kind of deviates from that and says, what if it was about persistence and exploration? You know, persistence about learning the place, which I think is really strong. And I think, you know, although there are the elements of like, combat is difficult, it's still a 2D game, so the combat works in a completely different way. You're not dodge rolling constantly, you know, you don't even get the ability to like dash through enemies and have invincibility frames until like your last 5 hours of that game. It really is about like learning and mastering that version of combat. And even though it's
a Mega Man vibe in that way, where it's like very simple mechanics that you can master easily. Or over time.
And even though it pulls like a bonfire adjacent thing with the benches, you kind of need that. You need the ability to like fast travel around. You need the ability to like sit and take a break and like kind of explore the map on your own and just like sit there and look at it and see where to go next and what you think should happen next. You know, the elements that they pull from Dark Souls are done so tastefully and so well that it doesn't feel like they're copying in any capacity, really. And even Remnant, a game that you and I love, has essentially bonfires via those world stones. It has fog doors before big bosses, and like that stuff is not why Remnant is fun, you know?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And like you can have checkpoints, like that's not derivative in any way. It's just the minor details that like feel like the wrong lessons were learned sometimes with a lot of Souls-like. So you've been also playing a couple other Souls-like games that you also think might have nailed it a little bit better than maybe Chronos has.
So Hollow Knight is the big one, I think. But the other one that came out in 2018 that like you and I totally missed out on, and I've kind of like had on the back burner and wanted to check out for a long time, and like finally pulled the trigger because I was kind of formulating these thoughts on Souls-likes. And I was like, why not? Let's go check it out. Is Ashen, an Annapurna Interactive published game.
The Ashen Wolves, the fourth house. Of,
It's the DLC for Fire Emblem Three Houses. Is weirdly enough a Souls-like. Who would have thunk it? Now,
I'm a happy main, so you know.
This is by A44 Games, I believe is the name of the developer, and then published by Annapurna Interactive. Ashen is a game that came out in 2018. Is now available, I think, on pretty much every platform as well. So like you can go pick it up on Switch, which I've seen some stuff about this running really well on Switch. So like if you have it for Switch, I would probably recommend it. The only reason I got it on Xbox is I just wanted to see it in, you know, glorious 4K. But anyway, I'm playing this game, and immediately, like within the first like 5 to 10 minutes, I was like, this is a game that I really should have played in 2018 and should have been the kind of game that you and I were referencing literally all the time. You in particular, I think, would love what this game is doing with the Souls-like genre. I think particularly because it like does almost exactly what Hollow Knight does. So it's taking Souls combat, kind of like a loose version of Souls combat, and marrying it with like an open world RPG game, which honestly sounds a lot like what the next FromSoft game is. Elden Ring is the next game in development, which is like a George R.R. Martin written FromSoft Souls-like in like a dark fantasy world that is an open world exploration game. Like you're hopping on a horse and riding around and, going and doing quests, I guess, and stuff like that. But has Souls combat in it. Ashen did this a couple of years ago, which I'm constantly blown away by. So like, the Souls combat, it's fine. It's what you'd expect. You have light weapons and heavy weapons, and you got a shield in one arm and a sword, or not even a sword, actually. There are no swords in this game, only axes and maces. But you got an axe in the other arm. You're doing light attacks, you're doing heavy attacks, you're like backstepping, dodging out of the way. It's all that stuff. But what this game really fucking nails is
swords. I just love that detail.
What if that was the one bullet point? Was like, it's a Souls-like, but no swords this time.
No swords this time. Oh, hell yeah. Give me a blunt weapon, please.
What this game nails is tone and vibe. What this game nails is having a world that is so gorgeous that you want to explore it and you want to take the time to go check it out. I think that this game, while it has kind of like a Souls adjacent lore going on, where like people sit there and they talk about nouns that are capitalized for reasons that I can't explain.
The Moth Prince.
Yeah,
I haven't seen him much, but I don't remember much these days.
Exactly. Yeah, they keep referring to the bird.
Oh, have you seen the bird? Sorry.
Oh, you're new here. Have you seen the bird?
It is that vibe, honestly. And like that stuff doesn't really appeal to me as much as like I am going out into this world and just kind of like seeing what's around every corner. There are a bunch of like pickups and collectibles all over the place. There are a ton of weapons to pick up. There's so much stuff to find. But this game kind of like, I think, boils down some of the Souls stuff into a more palatable way, almost the way Chronos does, but I think with an even more streamlined approach where like when you finish a quest, your health or stamina gets increased. So you're not even like...
So you don't age 10 years?
You don't age 10 years. You're not, you're not like even leveling up stats like via, saving up a currency and then investing them in those stats. Like it just happens kind of passively. As you go around, you can find these feathers in the world that allow you to also level up your health or stamina or other stats, which is really wonderful.
That's awesome.
But one of the bigger things I think that this game does, almost like Remnant, which is kind of funny because I think same year or maybe the year before, it's
Remnant
multiplayer.
Was the year after, but Ashen was like right at the end of 2018. It's no wonder we missed it.
Yeah, it was a December like 18th game or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a multiplayer game.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so when you're playing single player, you have an AI companion that's like traveling along with you, which already makes it feel like way less intimidating to go out into the world by yourself and like explore shit. A lot of this game is literally just about poking at the edges of the world like Hollow Knight and seeing what's around every corner and like, oh my God, there's a cave here. Let me go explore this cave. And like 2 hours later, you've come out and you're like, wow, I fucking rule now. Stuff like that, which is really wonderful. And having somebody with you to do that allows you in, like a FromSoft game where you're pulling someone into the world and like, oh, thank God I have someone else to like take the aggro on this boss so I can attack them from behind or something. That's happening in all combat at all times in Ashen, which is really nice, especially considering they're throwing so many enemies at you at once in a lot of instances. You'll be fighting 3 or 4 guys at the same time. So having somebody else there really helps. What's really cool about it is that you're just like in Journey, you're persistently connected to the internet as you're playing it. So at any point, somebody else could just inhabit the body of your AI companion. And when they're playing, they just see themselves. They see the character that they created. And to them, you are the AI companion. And this just happens seamlessly in and out where like your AI
That's really
companion
cool.
will just be kind of like inhabited by another player who's also going through the world at the same time, which is really, really cool. It's a really interesting system. I personally, on my end, have turned off the ability to play multiplayer. I just have an AI companion because I have found that every once in a while, somebody will come in and inhabit my world and then just be like, oh, okay, I'm going to fuck off and do this thing. It's like, okay, well, okay. You're not like, we're not even going for the same quest or anything. They just like leave. It's like, okay, now I'm just by myself.
I want to see the bird. Fine,
yeah, I just can't deal with it. So I just turned that off. But if you pick up this game at any point, I would love to play it with you or something like that. Because I think it's really incredible.
No, it sounds rad, man. I mean, you know us in Annapurna. It's an instant sell.
Yeah.
And 2, I think something I'm thinking about when you said AI companion, another Souls-like that did that was actually Code Vein, which like extremely silly game. It does some cool stuff, but it's like very goofy.
Yeah.
But the idea of having like a permanent, like, okay, which NPC do you want with you on this adventure is a cool concept. Yeah. It kind of reminds me in something that I'm going to put out into the universe. Hey, if you want to make a game and take a cool mechanic and build something around it, look no further than, you guessed it, Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen. The pawn system, which I know is hard to pull off, but the pawn system is such a cool way to make a really like brutally difficult world more parsable when you have like AI NPCs who like learn and remember and will help you on quests. I mean, it's kind of Oblivion in that game where they're like, if you're tired, go to bed. And it's like, this is nothing that I needed to hear. But they'll also like during a quest, they'll be like, oh, I know a shortcut, and they'll run off and do it. So like,
right. Yeah. So specifically, I guess just to drill down on that for those of you who don't know about Dragon's Dogma, because it's been a long time since we talked about it. But,
hey, 88% of the audience, in case you don't know what Dragon's Dogma is.
When you hire pawns, quote unquote, you're like going into this like weird ethereal realm, and you're hiring pawns from other players, like other people who have like played through Dragon's Dogma, put their pawns up to get hired. And if you hire someone who has done the quest that you're about to do, they will just lead you through it, which is the fucking best. It's so nice because that game is so huge. It's so gigantic that you almost need something like that. You need a guiding force, and it allows you to play a Souls-like or like a game inspired by Souls stuff, and also kind of like an open world Bethesda game without the need to go on GameFAQs or do whatever, because the game itself is helping you in those instances. It's like the one nice olive branch Dragon's Dogma gives you.
Yeah, and I think that there's such a void for that with a Souls-like game. You know, like obviously you can summon Solaire and you can summon Alfred in Bloodborne. They like help you out for a fight, but like something I do in like every other playthrough of Skyrim is I'll get a follower and like really invest in them, and it really changes the whole dynamic of the game. And like that's something I also really enjoyed about Outer Worlds, you know, and there was a heavy focus on that with that game, where like you have these companions who like have their thoughts about what's going on and offer their perspective and their strengths, and like that could be so cool in a game as daunting as you know. And I think in traditional Souls formula, maybe even play with that. Maybe they'll turn on you, you know, something like that. Like there's a lot of stuff you can do with it. Like in Dark Souls 3, and it seems to be like in the more modern, like Bloodborne on, there's always like a home base full of characters who have plots play out. So like in Bloodborne, it's the cathedral. In Dark Souls 3, it's the Firelink Shrine. And in Sekiro, it's largely the temple, and then it turns into the castle later. But like it would be so cool to be like, hey, like you know, Hanbei, you want to come with me? You know, like, I just think that would be really fun.
Okay, so taking it back to Ashen.
Sorry. Yeah, but that awoken a desire in me that I needed to express.
I'm about to fulfill your every desire and wish, Steven. Taking it back to Ashen, I think that the one thing I really wanted to highlight about this game, I think the most interesting thing about the whole game, is that when you start the game, it's you and this other guy, and you kind of are escaping this cave. You know, it's been like dark and horrifying for so long, and suddenly the Ashen, capital A, wakes up and starts bringing light back into the world. You know, it's like a post-apocalypse world that has this kind of dichotomy between light and dark that happens every like age or so. And you're entering an age of light again, but what that means is that you have to cast out the darkness that's around. So that's like, from a lore perspective, what you're trying to do is just like wipe out the last remaining dark so you can have like another like bright, optimistic age. So you exit this cave, you know, you and a bunch of people, and you find this place called the Vagrant's Rest, which is just like a nice plateau that like has a bunch of ruins on it and seems like a nice place to like start a home. So that is your home base in this game. And as you're continuing to play, you're picking up quests from the people in Vagrant's Rest and going out into the world and bringing more people back who have more to offer to the community. And every time you go out and find a person or complete a quest and come back, Vagrant's Rest has been built up more. There's scaffolding in more places. There are houses now. There are even more people who have showed up, and merchants and like different kinds of places where you can go upgrade your materials or have access to new things and abilities and items and stuff like that. It feels like an ever-growing place just because you're going out into the world and putting the time and effort into exploring it. And it really harkens back to the thing that I love so much, the thing that really stuck out to me about Breath of the Wild.
I was thinking Tarrytown this whole time.
It's Tarrytown.
Yes, it's Tarrytown.
Every
game needs a Tarrytown.
I totally agree.
A true game.
And this is just Tarrytown as a whole video game, essentially.
Yeah.
The concept is, you know, again, talking thematically about the thing that I loved about Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild is a game that takes place 100 years after the apocalypse, and everybody is like kind of doing all right because of like the overwhelming sense of community and the welcoming of others into your home and things like that. The world of Hyrule in Breath of the Wild is a place that like is beautiful and has been claimed by the darkness, but is weirdly optimistic and hopeful at times. And that is what Ashen is trying to accomplish. Ashen is doing the exact same thing. And the dialogue, even like, I don't remember any of the dialogue literally, but like a lot of the dialogue from the villagers in Vagrant's Rest kind of like go to confirm that. A lot of it is about like, yeah, if we work together, we can build this place up and like make a new life for ourselves. So we're not just like living in caves and stuff anymore in fear. Like we're building something new. We're building a new city for that is welcome to everybody. And that kind of sense of like community and belonging and like ownership over the future, I think is really, really beautiful. And one of the things that makes me love playing Ashen so much is because every time I go and do a quest, I'm so excited to go back to Vagrant's Rest and see what's going on there and see who has showed up. When I go out and I find somebody who's like, you know, a kind of a medicinal healer, and I bring her back to Vagrant's Rest, like suddenly everybody's kind of in more high spirits now because, hey, guess what? You have a fucking doctor here now. It's great. It's incredible. It changes the livelihood of everybody who's living there. And that kind of stuff is just happening over and over and over and over again. And the further you explore from Vagrant's Rest, the more people you can bring back and the more kinds of people you can bring back. And it becomes this like really beautiful, diverse community that I just like love being in. And like, just to highlight this fact, I haven't mentioned any of the Souls shit in that game at all in like 10 minutes. I was
about to say, yeah. And that's the beauty of it is it's using that kind of blueprint as a jumping off point and not as like the end
its
all
identity.
Be all.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Yeah. That sounds amazing. I definitely want to pick that up and maybe we can revisit it. But like you've sold me on that completely. It sounds great.
Yeah, it's so good. I'll say this much, like if you're listening to this and you're like, I want to check this out, I'll say like the first hour or two is not like super compelling. But when you start to build up Vagrant's Rest and you explore into the second area and the third area is really when that game takes off. So if you pick it up and you're like, I'm not so sure about this within the first like hour or so, like just give it a little bit more. And I promise you, it's really going to sink its hooks into you.
That's awesome.
It's really, really good. Yeah, I can't really recommend it highly enough. As with all Annapurna stuff, I found I'm just on this like God quest to play every Annapurna game pretty much at this point.
Yeah.
And Ashen felt right for this time and place. So I'm probably going to play a lot more of it. I've been streaming it a little bit as like my before bed game. I play like a half hour to an hour of it every night before I go to sleep because weirdly it is like a low key Souls game, and I think it's been fitting into that schedule for me really well. So yeah,
that's awesome.
But
that
I do think like that and Hollow Knight, and weirdly to a certain extent, and I know some people would push back against this, but Jedi Fallen Order I think are all games that take ideas from the Souls genre and like kind of mash them into something that is far and away beyond that, you know, like just to drill down on Fallen Order real quick, I guess, like that is a game that makes sense to have Souls combat because you're a fucking Jedi, you know, like you're going around, you have a goddamn lightsaber and the Force, like it's cool, and you're not a great Jedi, you've only been trained a little bit, so it makes sense that a lot of that stuff is difficult, but at the same time, you know, they're telling an incredible Star Wars story, you're exploring a bunch of like new and interesting planets, and it has that Metroidvania kind of exploration. It works in that game, I think, better than things like Chronos, for example, which I hate to keep dunking on because again, I do think there's a lot of merit in that game, and I think I'm probably gonna maybe keep playing it a little bit more. But after playing things like Ashen, it's like, man, there is, I think, like if you want the Souls-like genre to actually become a genre and not just be beholden to FromSoft stuff, like you really need to interrogate why you're taking those elements from that game.
Yeah.
You know?
And there's a lot of stuff to take. I mean, on the complete opposite, you know, if Ashen is a game that is kind of like using the formula to really dive deeper into the idea of setting an ensemble and building an environment within that, Neo 2 is a game that we talked about at the very start of the year that is completely about the combat. You know, they have, you know, it's made by Team Ninja and I think Tecmo Koei, if I'm not mistaken. But like they're going full out on the like Warriors fighting game DNA within a Soul setting. And I thought it was a lot of fun. You know, it's extremely unrelentlessly video gamey in a way that does not like aid a sense of wonder or place at all. But it's like really gripping for anyone who has an interest in like fighting games or like mastering combos or like, you know, pulling off attacks in a way that's very gratifying. I had a lot of fun with that game. And that's like an example of a Soulslike that doesn't feel derivative as much as it does just like, and that is also, I think Neo 1, which I still haven't played, was like the first big Soulslike that people were talking about, if memory serves.
Yeah.
So
very much. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think like, I don't know. I just think the future for that as a genre is bright if games like Ashen and Hollow Knight keep coming along, and Remnant even to a certain extent. I mean, Remnant 2 is in development and is going to come out, and like will probably be another game that you and I check out and enjoy if it pulls a lot of the learnings from Remnant into, you know, whatever they work on next.
Yeah, I hope. Just to be clear too, like with Remnant, I think the things that really worked for you and I were the co-op, obviously. I thought that the weapons were a lot of fun. You know, like it wasn't just like, here's an assault rifle. It's like, here's a pistol that shoots bouncing plasma. You know, it kind of had like almost Doom DNA there. Like they had fun with like the absurdity of it, and just the like, it felt like no one said no to an idea for that game,
and it works. Like, the fact that it
works, But I don't know if they're like, there's a lot of stuff too. It's like whenever you die, there's a quote from Nietzsche, and it's like, why is this happening? Or you know, it's like Shakespeare, Buddha, and Nietzsche quotes thrown at you when you die.
It feels like camp. You know, it feels like a camp version of Dark Souls, and I think that's the point that I wanted to make.
Yes, it does. Yeah,
I think that's the point that I wanted to make on top of all of this is like, it doesn't have to be dark fantasy. It doesn't have to be dark medieval fantasy. It doesn't have to be a sword and shield. You can have a lot of these elements and explore new genres from like from like a setting perspective. Like, where is my far future sci-fi version of Dark Souls? You know,
I give me a Jane Austen dating sim with Souls mechanics. Like that would be great.
Why not?
You know, like just live a little. Like go for it.
And I honestly think that FromSoft is starting to experience that themselves in a lot of instances. Right? Like Bloodborne, I think was an experiment in that direction. Sekiro is an experiment in that direction.
Yeah.
And it seems like Elden Ring might be a step backwards, but they're exploring so much more mechanically that it kind of doesn't matter that it's, you know, dark fantasy anymore. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just really interested to see like what other games pull inspiration from Dark Souls, I think, in the future. And if every once in a while we get a thing like Hollow Knight or Ashen or like Silksong, which is coming soon potentially, then I think the future is bright for that as a genre. And I think my end goal there is to not have the conversation about is it a genre anymore or not. You know, like I don't like, as interesting as it is to play all of this stuff now and like ask that question, it'll be really cool when we don't have to ask that question anymore.
I totally agree. And that's where my frustration comes, is like you said earlier that you want it to be a genre and not like just because it's hot right now. The same way that like 8 million Fortnite clones are. Like I don't want this to be like a Fortnite clone zone, you know?
Yeah.
Like truly, I would love, like it sounded like a bit, give me a Jane Austen dating sim with Souls mechanics. Like I think you can be as creative as you want with it.
Yes.
Because it's not beholden to sword and shield dark fantasy, like you said.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool. Ashen.
We're right. We get it.
Okay. Let's take a break and then talk about what you're playing.
Sounds good.
Goodbye.
See you soon. I'm the destroyer of segments, just real quick. I feel like I say something like, okay, now it's time to actually stop.
It's good, though. It's helpful, believe it or not.
It's not a bad thing. You need to, you know, harvest the crops to grow new.
Absolutely. I just found a small bag of corn in Chronos before the ashes. And it was like, it's not enough corn to be usable for farming. And I was like, what the fuck does this mean?
Here's the thing. Like, I love items like that. Like Nino Kuni, you drink iced coffee to replenish your mana, which is like, give me more of that. I love that.
But this is an item I'm supposed to use like as a puzzle solving element.
Oh shit.
Like when I go up to a door and I open up my inventory to see what I can use to open the door, the bag of corn is an option.
Bag of corn, door that won't open, monster dreams. Okay, let's take a break.
Yes. Goodbye. Steven, you're playing a few games simultaneously, and I really want to hear about that. There's one in particular that I'm like really excited to hear about. The other one I've never even heard of, and the third one is Yakuza, which you wanted to give a quick update on.
Yeah, so just for full context, right now I'm fully in gearing up for Game of the Year mode. So that means I'm playing a lot of games that I've deemed, or not deemed, but that I've I've decided that I really want to finish before I can properly rank. I've said this many times. I'm not one who needs to finish everything I pick up, nor is that even possible for the show. But for a game that I'm really enjoying the story, like Yakuza, I'm like, okay, I want to see this through to the end because like I know it's going to pay off, and it already is. I'm on the last chapter, and like that game does kind of bump into like ironically Dragon Quest issues of like needing to grind to progress, which is not maybe something I have experienced with Dragon Quest, but definitely have experience with RPGs in general.
Yeah.
But the story is winding up in a way that's very exciting. So, and from what I know, I've heard the finale of that game is like very worth it. So very excited for that.
Nice.
Everything else, I'm just sort of trying to put more time into games that we've already covered or talked about to like get a very fresh perspective on. And this is what I always look forward to doing this time of year. I'm looking for games that I might have missed or maybe that went under the radar that I can get some time with before we decide what's on the list. So I actually tweeted out like, hey, what are games you think were kind of like underrated this year? Maybe got lost in the hype of other games. And a big one was Umurangi Generation, which I sadly can't play yet. It's only on PC right now. I've got a Mac, as you know. And I love my Mac, but I can't play Umurangi Generation, okay? But it's coming out for Switch later this year, which was said in September. So that means it could either come out on Switch this month or it can come out early next year, maybe later. Who knows? There hasn't really been a lot of updates on that. But that game looks super cool. I know I would love a game like that. It's basically like photo mode Jet Set Radio. So you're in like a very dystopian cyberpunk future, but it's all about being a photographer and capturing those moments.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Was it made for me?
Yes. And it's just something that I really want to experience because it's so up our alley, and especially up your alley, given that it's photo mode the game. And I think it's something that like just the idea of, you know, going back to Kojima's whole thing of like stick versus rope, like what is the central tool of a gameplay? I think making a camera the central function is a very interesting idea.
Totally.
So that's something that I really want to check out. If all stars align, that comes out on Switch before we record. Right now, it's looking like we might be recording our GOTY episode this coming weekend. This comes out on Wednesday. We may be recording on the 13th. If not, it will be the next week. So expect the GOTY episode in the next 2 weeks, basically.
Yeah, and it's possible there are a couple of games coming out before the end of the year that we want to check out. We just noticed that Call of the Sea is like one of the first big like next gen Xbox exclusives that's coming out in 2 days after our recording this episode. So like,
so it will have already come out yesterday.
Yeah. So there's just like a lot on the horizon. The Game Awards might have some announcements. Who knows? But yeah, anyway, that's how we're basing that stuff on. At the moment, Umurangi Generation is a thing that I just keep hearing about. And now that you've said all of that, I really want to play. But like, it's just a bummer that it's only on PC at the moment. And I'm glad it'll be on other consoles. It kind of sounds like Return of the Obra Dinn, which was like our big, like, you know, kind of missing link game from the previous year that we like, I think both noted in the GOTY episode. Like if we had played Return of the Obra Dinn, like maybe it would have made the list or
same with Disco Elysium.
Disco Elysium as well, which is also coming to consoles, I think, next year. So yeah, I just imagine when Umurangi Generation comes out on consoles, we'll be able to get our hands on it and probably have a great time. And who knows, maybe we'll even argue about if it's worth being on the 2021 GOTY list because it got released on consoles.
Works for me. I mean, I think we always want our GOTY list to be kind of set in stone to add to the ceremony, but you know, we can always do a retroactive thing if it comes out later. I mean,
you're saying change the list.
There was a time when we first started doing the show, I had this idea of if we ever looked like, 'cause, you know, I like when we look back on the list of the year before and kind of briefly comment on it. At first, I was like, maybe if we feel really strongly, we can change the list. But I actually don't know if I like that idea. Okay. I kind of like committing to it, you know, and then we could comment on it. Maybe we could be okay, like now that a year has passed, maybe I would put things a little bit differently. But I like it kind of being set, unless you feel otherwise. But
well, I'll be very interested to see when you finally finish playing God of War before God of War 2 comes out next year, if you go back and retroactively change your 2018 list while I go back and add Ashen.
It just opens up too many floodgates for me. You know, I like it being a fine. I don't want to be an originalist for GOTY, you know, doctrines, but I just feel like it should be set in stone a little bit, you know?
Okay. Yeah, that's fine by me.
Anyway, all that aside, I had been checking out a few games that I have had my eye on for a while, or that I just discovered recently. I'm excited to hear which one you are more excited to hear about. So I'll just, 50-50 chance. One of the games is Sakuna of Rice and Ruin.
Yeah, this one I've had my eye on for a long time, and I'm really excited to hear about because I know literally nothing about it outside of the screenshots I've seen on the eShop, which honestly do not do a very good job of telling me what kind of game it is.
Yeah,
but I've heard a lot of really good things. It sold really, really, really well right when it came out, specifically in Japan, was like the top selling game on the eShop. So I'm excited to hear what it is and how it is. And like, should I be playing it for GOTY season potentially? So please lay it on me, my friend.
Yeah, I'll frame up both of the games I'm going to talk about are like very unique in their exploration of genre and are absolutely worth checking out.
But
yeah, Sakuna of Rice and Ruin. I saw like again just like what the game looked like. I think at one of the Nintendo Directs. They announced it a while ago. It's been in my calendar. Whenever we watch a direct or any kind of announcement and a game catches my eye, I'll put the date of release in my calendar. Sakuna's it came out last month, towards the end of last month.
Yeah.
It has big Okami vibes. It's set in kind of like a feudal era Japan where there are sort of gods and demons that exist alongside humanity, but it's in a very kind of colorful and cartoony style. And the game is about this goddess who is the daughter of the goddess of the harvest and the god of like war, I think, basically, or like combat, which leads into her
fighting and farming, the two Fs.
Yeah, we'll get into that. So basically, it begins. She's like incredibly spoiled. There's like every year there's this annual event where the gods all bring like a dish they made, and she's like, "I'm the daughter of the goddess of the harvest. Like, I don't need to do anything. I've got amazing rice right here." She's drunk, like she's really spoiled, and a group of mortals, a group of like common folk, manage to sneak into the god of the realms and start eating all the food. And she's like, "Yeah, you guys can come in, whatever, I don't care." So they start eating, but there's like chaos ensues, and they end up lighting a building on fire by accident. It's just a mess. And the head goddess is like, Sakuna, like, you fucked up, you're banished. Like, go with these humans back to the mortal realm and like get your life together. So she has to go back with them, with like her kind of spirit companion. And basically the game is her living with these humans, kind of trying to get on a better path. And it is half her in this new island region, fighting demons in like a left to right beat 'em up game, kind of action RPG. And the other half is a farming sim where, kind of like Terrytown, you have found this corner of the mountain to live on and settle in. And because she has these powers of the goddess of the harvest, she's slowly learning how to do like the manual labor of farming. Yeah. So she's working with these humans to like kind of rebuild and reclaim a setting from darkness, and also kind of like better herself and her life and get like a better point of view about the world. So it's really fun. The writing is very silly and cartoony, and it takes a while to get going. Like, it's a little bit long in the beginning. Like, that whole cutscene I summed up is like maybe 20 minutes. Like, oh, okay.
Oh, but just like Okami. Okay.
Yeah. But once you get to, it's really, because I think the first thing that happens is you fighting demons, which is, in the left to right point of view. And it's in kind of like a 2.5D presentation. So like it's 3D, but on this left to right grid. And you've got very classic stuff like light attack, heavy attack. You've got like kind of a grappling hook thing. You do unlock more abilities as the game goes on. And I will say, in the very beginning, the combat feels a little stiff. Like, I wasn't sure how much I liked it. It gets significantly better the more you play. Once you have a little bit more versatility, and once the game kind of opens up a bit more, it feels much more fun to do that section of the game. But kind of akin to Moonlighter, I think the star of the game is the other half, is the farming sim, where it's a really in the weeds farming sim where like it tells you the exact degree of the weather outside. You have to kind of manually like let the water into the rice fields and like actually physically plant each seed. Which sounds like a lot, but I think that there's a certain kind of player who really loves that kind of approach to a farming sim. Yeah. Because there are so many now. You've got your Stardew Valleys and even Animal Crossing to an extent.
You got Farming Simulator.
You've got Farming Simulator. So this game, I think, is kind of a fresh approach to it in that, it's very much more like Death Stranding levels of detail, where it's like you can like zero in on a single thing of rice you planted, and Sakuna will be like, maybe it's a little bit too close, or maybe I can let a little bit more water in for this.
Wild.
And what's fun is that the things you grow help you fight demons, and the things you get from fighting demons help you plant more stuff. So both sides of the game are kind of helping the other one grow.
Yeah.
And the game feels like it was a cult hit on the GameCube. Like that's like my elevator pitch. Whatever that means to you, that's like how I feel about the game. It's really lovely. Like the style of the presentation and like the way the light hits the water and the rice field. Like it's a really pretty game, and it's just like really nice and fun. Like it's a very lighthearted game that might be fun for winter, you know, as like the days are shorter and you're inside more. Like this is a very kind of chill game to put on to like beat up some rabbit demons and then plant some flowers and rice. Like, I like the hook of it a lot. I like the flow of it. It's a little bit, I struggled in the beginning to like really know what to do. As long as the intro is, they don't really tell you like how to use all the things to your advantage, but there's also a lot of beauty in just kind of finding that out as you go.
I was about to say, is that part of it? Do you think that part of it, from a game design perspective, is you learning it yourself the way that she is kind of learning it for herself?
Yeah, because she's someone who's kind of been so spoiled her whole life that kind of just being like let loose on a farm that she has to make work for herself and for others. It kind of aids the narrative in that way. So yeah, I think it works, and I think like it's just a very fun setting to be in. Like the music's great, the art's great. You find different equipment, so like you'll have different kind of hats. And like I have this giant broom that I hit rabbits with now. It's great. It's a good time. I would recommend it. It's on Switch. It's a really fun time, especially if you're into farming sims and want like kind of a fresh take on that genre. I think you'll enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting. I really do appreciate that kind of like dichotomy between gameplay styles, right? Like Moonlighter, I think you shouted out. Another one that I've been meaning to check out for a really long time, but I probably will eventually, is Battle Chef Brigade, which is another one that like you go out and you do like a beat 'em up to gather ingredients so you can go back and like have a cooking tournament, which is I think kind of like akin to a match 3 game or something along those lines. Like that stuff seems really cool, and it seems like Sakuna is like exploring that kind of more narratively than I think the other two are.
Totally.
And I don't know, I'm into that. It sounds good. It is interesting that there's this like weird zeitgeist of like gods needing to redeem themselves recently, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely.
What was that game that just came out? The Ubisoft Immortals Phoenix Rising just came out, which apparently is like very similar vibes, and also like Hades is like, you know, kind of Greek mythos.
Yeah,
which is
it feels a little bit like a fable. You know, it's like there was this goddess who was so spoiled that she had to plant rice for, you know, years at a time. But yeah,
for 30 to 40 hours, depending on if she did all the side quests.
What's fun too is that it kind of is open to like when you leave and do whatever. So it's not like you can kind of spend a whole day at the farm if you want, or you can spend a whole day fighting demons, but there's kind of a real time clock happening. So like when you see the sun setting, kind of like in Minecraft, the demons get stronger at night, and like you straight up can't see what's happening in the cave when it's like actually nighttime.
Yeah.
So you got to get out of there. So like kind of planning your days, like learning from what happens in the environment organically is a really fun time. I can see it being frustrating, but I can also see, like we said earlier, like learning from your mistakes and failure and knowing that you're not going to get it right the first time is kind of what keeps you going in this game.
I guess my other big question, because I'm now considering if I should pick this game up or not, you know, this year, or if I should wait until next year. But I'm just wondering, like, how much patience do you think this game requires? Like, do you think it lends itself to? Do you think it actually lends itself to like the Stardew Valley Animal Crossing side of things, where like it's such a charming place to be that you want to be there and you don't mind the more tedious stuff because it just allows you to like hang out more? Or do you think it like requires a little bit more patience and a little more like tenacity and perseverance to spend time in both elements of the game?
That's a great question. I think it requires more patience. Animal Crossing is very forgiving in that, especially in New Horizons, where like you're never punished for doing anything, you know?
Yeah.
And like it's really just of your own goal for the island that you have to really do anything at all. Stardew Valley has that ticking clock and, you know, is sort of a long-term, you know, there's a lot of patience required there as well, but there's also a lot to do. So like if you want to like kind of ignore farming and just do the social stuff, we have a bonus episode about Stardew Valley if you want to hear our full thoughts on it. But if you want to just do like the caves or just do the socializing or, you know, any of the various activities, you can do that. In Sakuna, it's just farming or fighting demons.
Yeah.
So I think that for either of those to really pay off, there is patience required because like you're always kind of waiting for the other one to manifest. So yeah, I think what's also interesting though is that there are two difficulty sliders. There's a difficulty slider for the combat and there's a difficulty slider for the farming.
Oh.
You could put the farming on hard and put the combat on easy or vice versa.
I love that.
Yeah, I don't really know what that would change, but I think that like if you want a more forgiving experience for the farming, if it like, especially if you're learning the game and don't really know what to do quite yet, like I'm still very much learning it. And what's cool though, I just like how manual it is. I haven't seen that in a farming sim, probably short of like actual farming simulator. You don't normally see that. Having to like lift a, pull a thing up to let the water in and then put it down when there's enough water or let water out on the other side and like physically walk around and have to plant every seed. There's a very kind of satisfying feeling from that I think might be subjective, but I think definitely like is something that I think a lot of players want to see in games like this. So yeah, there's patience required, but I think it's also like what you look for in this type of game.
Yeah, it weirdly sounds like a really good like before bed kind of game, especially on the Switch. Like if you're playing in handheld mode.
Yeah, it's a very positive ritual for sure. I think it's probably best played in like short spurts.
Yeah,
I think if you're playing this for like hours, you might be like, okay, come on, can you grow a little faster?
Right.
I think there's a big discussion of like the in-game clock versus like time passing in real life, like Animal Crossing. There are pros and cons to both. I haven't found the in-game clock to be to my detriment yet, other than being in a cave too late, or I had a bunch of meat and fruit that has all gone bad at this point because I didn't eat it and I didn't know it was going to go bad, but you can use it as fertilizer now. So it seems like even if something like wastes away, you can still find a use for it, which is cool.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting.
Yeah,
I'm like still on the fence about it, honestly, but it sounds really interesting. And honestly, I had seen, like I said, the screenshots for it on the Switch eShop, and like that's the most I'd really experienced it outside of just like seeing that everybody seems to love it. So knowing more about what it's about, actually does make me want to check it out a little bit more, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, if you're unsure, there's no harm in waiting until your schedule clears up a bit. I know we're both in like goaty mode of like getting everything in order, so it might not be the right time for a game that kind of requires patience when we're like trying to dive deep into everything, but it's definitely worth checking out. I think you would like it a lot. If you don't mind me moving on, the other game, which I also think is up your alley and is maybe the strangest game I've played all this year, and I mean that as a compliment, is Paradise Killer.
This one I have never heard of, so I'm excited to hear about it.
So Paradise Killer, actually, I read, let's do some research on Pace Magazine. I read their list of like 40 best games of the year, and it was on it. And also in our Discord, a shout out to, there's a pinned form in the Into the Aether channel for people to vote for their top 5 of 2020. And Paradise Killer got a couple of votes. And I looked it up and I was like, what is this? This looks so cool. It is like Vaporwave Phoenix Wright meets like a very demonic acid trip.
First person open world murder mystery is the headline on Nintendo.com.
Yeah, what is it out for? You can get it on Windows and Switch. So it's also on Mac. Cool. I am playing it on Switch per usual. And yeah, it is a very much a Phoenix Wright kind of visual novel where you are talking to a bunch of characters. There has been a murder mystery and there is a person who has been blamed for it. So there's a person who's like in custody of the judge who is being held on trial. And a lot of characters are like, we don't really need you interfering right now. We already know who it is. Kind of like a 12 Angry Men scenario with that.
Yeah.
And you play as Lady Love Dies, who is okay, here we go. So very simple setup. This is one of the strangest settings and like lore that can just be thrown at you, but it's so cool and fun, and like all the people who made this game, like it is such a cool setting. So basically there are these islands that are made to be paradise, and every time they're manufactured, as soon as they get close to actually making paradise, demons come in and destroy it, and they all move to a new island.
Okay.
Reminiscent of some games we talked about this year, weirdly enough. So there are characters who have been on other paradises before. Lady Love Dies is an investigator who was exiled from this current paradise, but has been summoned back by the judge, who is this like multi-limbed, kind of like Chaos from Hades, like a very strange character. And they're trying to figure out who committed this murder. One of the first characters you meet is a demon who is like this blue and neon pink creature who has like a censored smiley face sticker over their genitals and is flipping off the cameras with each hand, and the finger is censored, and their head is like a monolith of flesh. It's like one of the coolest designs I've seen in a character. And right away, it's like, hi, I'm a demon. The writing in this game and the dialogue is so much fun. And whenever you meet a character, your computer, whose name is Starlight, will be like, this is the witness of the end. They were born under the sign of Kiss Me to the Moon. They, were remembered on the dwarf star, commonly known as the moon, like that perished in the ninth paradise. Like, just as much I've played all of Kentucky Route Zero this year, and this game is the weirdest game I've played this year.
Yeah.
Like, it is so out there, and they're having so much fun with this, like, weird, like, way more positive Hotline Miami vibe, but like way more surreal and psychedelic. Like, just a bad acid trip the whole time.
Yeah.
And as you're walking around this setting, there's like really incredible like vaporwave music playing. Whenever you like investigate or look at an item, it kind of like mutes the audio a bit, and then it comes back in full force when you go back into the first person perspective. Like, I think you especially would really love the design and the music of this game. And it really shines when you're talking to these characters and investigating and like actually asking, like choosing, like, okay, do I press them on this issue? Do I have an alibi now? And the game does a good job of keeping track of like what the characters have told you. So they even list like, here are the alibis, here are the things that contradict their alibis. And, in the beginning, you're just sort of talking to various characters. At this point, I've talked to the architect, who's this like very like Art Deco woman with a dog, and she is like, everything's fine here, we'll be fine. And there's another guy who's called the Witness to the End, who is like a helmet on, and he's like, praise the gods, like the silent goat. And it's like so bizarre, but like you still eventually get a sense of what the world is like, and it's aided by the fact that it's a very straightforward, like, I just got to figure out who was murdered. You can say whatever the hell you want about the silent goat.
Yeah.
I know why I'm here.
Yeah. It seems like you would need a conceit that simple if you're going to go that bombastic with everything else. That's really fascinating.
So the investigation stuff is really cool. And you can also like spend time with the characters to increase your relationship with them, kind of like Persona, which I haven't done a lot of, but that does exist.
Yeah.
And it's a really, really cool approach at a Phoenix Wright type game. My only big thing with this game that like holds me back from heralding it as like one of the best this year is that navigating the environment can be very tedious. As beautiful as it is and as cool, like it begins with you literally taking a leap of faith and jumping into this island and walking around and kind of absorbing the atmosphere and hearing the music is so cool. There are items to find, but like you can kind of scan the environment and see how far away the other characters are. And sometimes it's like very confusing to get to the next character. And there will even be doors that are like locked or need to be powered on. I'm like, there's so much happening right now with the plot. I don't need hard puzzles to prevent me from getting to the part of the game I like.
Yeah.
I really wish this game, like, as much as I like walking around the environment, I think this game would have benefited from just doing Phoenix Wright, where you see a map and you just select where you want to go. And like, you can survey that from a first person perspective, but like have everyone you need to talk to in the room. Like, I don't get anything from like having to spend 20 minutes trying to find how to get to the next character, and all I want to do is get there because I know once I do it's going to be incredible.
Yeah, there's nothing else to do except traverse the environment in those instances. Like, you're literally just moving from point A to point B.
Yeah, you can find some stuff, and every now and then someone will call you on your phone. Like, I just got called by Crimson Acid, who has a goat head, and they're like, I live in the sewers, I sell secrets for money or for blood gems.
Yeah.
So always like casual references to satanic rituals happening. But yeah, it's just you walking around and finding stuff, and you have to save manually. It doesn't autosave. So like all that is a big enough bummer for me to bring up, because otherwise this game is incredible. Like the presentation, the writing, the music, the just ideas happening here are so fucking wild. I love it. Like, I really love this game. I just wish that it was easier to get through it, because walking around, and I'm also someone who, like, I easily get lost in games. Like, I don't know what it is. I just have a very hard time remembering where I was, and I don't enjoy adding adversity to that in any way. So I struggle with that part of the game, but everything else is incredible.
Paradise Killer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just looked up some screenshots and it looks like the kind of thing that I am surprised I didn't have on my radar, really, like literally at all.
Yeah, it's great.
It looks really cool. Shit. I want to check it out.
Sorry to add to your burden, but that's what I've been doing. I mean, I literally checked out both these games. I'm like, these are both things that like could potentially be on my list, you know? So yeah. But either way, regardless of my list, they're definitely worth checking out. Like, I would love to see more stuff like both these games. They're both really fresh ideas on like kind of like specific genres, and absolutely worth your time. Honestly, I think the bumping up against the navigation is also intensified by the fact that I'm trying to get through things faster than usual. So it probably wouldn't have been as much of a pain point as it is like December 7th, a week before we record Goaty. So yeah.
Yeah. I will say it is fascinating to just hear about like the Phoenix Wright like genre, you know, people thinking that you have to have the fog walls and the bonfires and stuff. Like why is that stuff in Paradise Killer, you know?
Yeah.
Why do you have to yell objection all the time in Paradise Killer? That's not what makes me like the Phoenix Wright games, you know?
Right. Well, but this is literally something that they don't like. Phoenix Wright, you can just go straight to a place. And it does have that first person perspective with like looking for clues or things in the environment.
That was a bit I was doing, but you took it into an actual like really good direction. Thanks for doing that. It was wonderful.
Yeah, man.
That was a whole new level of yes and. That was like it's like yes and here's my dissertation on your bit.
Yeah. So yeah, a whole new level of yes and that just stunned me into silence. Yeah, so those are the two games I've been playing. I don't really have much else to say. I'm still very early on in both of them, but would highly recommend both if anything I said was up your alley.
Yeah.
Paradise Killer, incredibly fresh idea, really great writing, really incredible character design, like incredible. I would love to see whatever that team does next. And I am definitely going to play more of Paradise Killer and Sakuna. Sakuna, I think I could probably spend more time with once the things settle a bit, which might be why you're on the fence. I think it's a game that kind of requires a little bit more time to get going.
Yeah, that was specifically why I asked that question about patience. Is like,
yeah,
how much time is it going to take me? I think is my big question there.
But yeah, both games are incredible. So yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you have on your list of like things you want to check out before the year is out? Or are you mostly just in like replaying and reshuffling mode?
Well, there's Call of the Sea, which comes out. It came out yesterday when this episode comes out. Haven was recommended to me on Game Pass, which I want to check out as well. I was going to check that out for today, but I wanted to. 3 games feel like a lot. I wanted to put a little bit more time into both Paradise Killer and Sakuna.
I'll be interested to hear about Haven if you check it out. I watched the trailers and looked at some stuff about it, and it honestly doesn't seem like something that I would be interested in, but it does seem like something you would be interested in. So I'll be interested to hear if you're into it.
I don't like this, but Steven might. Yeah, I get that.
Well, it's like I think your most anticipated game of next year is Sable, right?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, whenever that comes out, I'm very excited for Sable.
2021 release, I think, slated at the moment. So like it's coming out next year probably. And like that's your most anticipated game, which is exciting. I'm really excited to play it, but it's not mine. And I think Haven looks a lot like a kind of a Sable adjacent experience. Weirdly enough, the game that I'm most excited about for next year also looks like Haven and Sable, though, is Jet, that new game by Super Brothers. Which is going to be, I think, an exclusive for the PS5, which I'm like, I just really need to know more about.
There's a lot coming out. I mean, Final Fantasy 16 comes out next year, too.
Hypothetically, the date right now is 2021, which, like, I can't believe.
We'll see. Because we were talking about how hard this year has been for, like, limiting to 10 games. And I think next year might be even harder based on what's coming out. Yeah,
this was, like, an unanticipated incredible year for video games. And next year it just looks like it's gearing up to be, like, a 2007, 2011. Is there another year that you can throw down there?
2017.
2017, yeah.
Yeah.
Oof.
What else? And I also, if Umurangi Generation comes out on Switch, that's a big one. But there's a pretty good chance. Oh, and then if Silksong is shadow dropped, that's the other big one. Ugh. That's like why we're waiting for Thursday to determine when we record.
Yeah, I do think something is going to come out during the Game Awards. I just don't know what.
Clay Fighter 4.
No.
Oh shit, hold off on recording. We gotta play this thing first.
Oh my god, Clay Fighter. Celebrity Deathmatch. The video game.
Beavis and Butthead to America on the Series S.
Beavis and Butthead to America.
Cool. Yeah, so that's what's on my radar. Beavis and Butthead.
Okay. Well,
all right.
That sounds like the end of an episode. Yeah.
Hey, thanks again for listening. We really appreciate the support we've been getting lately. If you like the show, the best way to help it grow is to share it with a friend who you think might also like it. Writing a review on Apple Podcasts is also a very helpful way. A lot of you have done that recently. We see you. Thank you so much. It's really kind to see your thoughts put into words. All the links to the show are at enterthecast.online. That's our Twitch, which has been very active lately. Brendon has been doing morning streams of Hollow Knight and other streams as well. I'm going to get back to streaming too. I had a playthrough of Dragon Age Origins going, which will be resumed. I just have to figure out some of my setup, but expect to see me soon, maybe on PS4. And
I do have a question, actually, Twitch-wise, just out of curiosity for you, dear listener. I tend to not like post on Twitter and stuff whenever I'm going live. I just kind of like go live randomly. If there's a better way of notifying you, or if you, I guess, want better notifications about that stuff, I guess let me know. Right now we have a thing set up in the Discord where when you join the Discord, you can like click on a thing that will send you a Discord notification whenever we go live. And I guess there's also the Twitch notifications, but if you feel like you're missing streams a lot or something and would like to be watching them, I guess let me know on Twitter or on the Discord or Instagram or wherever you feel like sending me a message to let me know what a better method for that is, out of curiosity.
Yeah, that's helpful to know, because I mean, we've varied from like announcing it the day before to like just not even posting about it. So like, you know, if there's something in the middle that's better, please let us know.
Yeah, I will say also that I mentioned earlier on when talking about the TWG stuff that I'm working on, like a video thing. That specifically, I think, is to I guess just like create something that is separate separate from time is what I was about to say. Yeah, it's like Paradise Killer. I'm just trying to make something that is like unburdened by needing to be live or whatever, because I've heard feedback. Thank you for the feedback, by the way. I've heard feedback that, like, you know, the times that we can go live, which are like for me before work and after work, tend to not be the best times for most people to watch stuff live anyway. Which is why I'm trying to make something that is like just kind of can be ingested on your own time, you know, not something that you feel like you've missed out on, because even going and watching VODs of events that were live on Twitch can sometimes feel like you're missing out on like the fun interactive part of it. So I just am trying to make something that can be consumed on your own terms, I guess. And whatever's most convenient for you. So if you're into something like that, I guess let me know also. But I'm working on it regardless. Even if you hate the idea, I'm working on it. It's going to happen whether you want it or not.
Related to that kind of like permanent thing that you can experience whenever, we added a link to our Medium page on enterthecast.online. It's always been there, but it previously, for whatever reason, wasn't linked. So if you ever want to go back and read, basically what that was in the beginning was we had a monthly newsletter where Brendon and I would both write something either creative or more autobiographic or a mix between the two. We also would feature a lot of writing from people that we admired and art from people we admired and some of our own art sometimes. So that eventually kind of faded away when we realized we didn't want to create paywalled content from the Patreon, because originally that was just for patrons. And then it kind of went on a little bit of a hiatus. And then I wrote something a month or so ago about RPGs, and I'm definitely planning on writing more. And, you know, so
what did I write about? I wrote something. Oh, it was about Control. It was about the cloud versions of stuff.
Yeah. So that's going to kind of exist as like our creative free space to kind of do whatever, but expect more of that too. At least from my end, I really enjoy writing there. And it's kind of just a sort of cool way to also do stuff kind of outside of the show, outside of time, as you were saying. Mm-hmm. So, and also like definitely read some of the past entries there too. There's a lot of cool work by you and others, and myself, I'll say it. So yeah. Otherwise, Patreon, speaking of that, we've got a Patreon. It helps us pay AJ. It helps us buy equipment. It helps us buy games that we're on the fence about. It helps us grow. We can do the show without it. So if you ever have to pull your contribution for any financial reason, we will not take it personally. But for those who have backed it, thank you very, very much. We've been using it probably more than ever recently. So you've really helped the show like kind of get a head start in some areas. So thank you. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Do you have anything to add?
I don't think so, actually. I think you covered everything.
Thank you.
I think that's it. Wow.
We're really excited for the Game of the Year episode. We hope you are too. It's going to be a blast. We've done some fun stuff for it that's a little bit new. We're going to, again, kind of experimenting with the formula a little. So we hope you enjoy what we have going on there and expect that in the next 2 weeks.
I will say, you know, the one big bummer, I think, is that this is going to be the first one that we don't get to record in person, which is kind of unfortunate, you know, just given the state of things here in the United States of America. where the pandemic is still like well underway. But that said, I'm really, really hoping that next year we're able to record some more stuff in person. I would really like to do that.
You won't be able to get rid of me. Once I can go to Jersey freely, I'm going to be all over you. Yeah, it's going to be great.
That'll be hard because I'm not in New Jersey anymore, but good luck.
I told you my name is Britton Bigley. No, shut up. I know who you are. Kiss me.
I mean, so I guess peek behind the curtain, I do have a very nice and cool deck here at my new apartment, and I would love nothing more than to record an episode outside on the deck. That's like my dream Aether scenario.
Plan. That was the plan when things were a little bit like, okay, we can take a calculated risk. I can fly home in a hazmat Big Daddy suit. And like,
we were going to put like a space heater outside so we'd all be able to sit on opposite corners of the deck and record an episode outside, which would be really fun.
All that to say, it's still going to be a magical time.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
It'll be a great time, but I agree. I think it'll be fun to do some stuff in person that maybe will lead its way to other things as well. If we're together in the same space, there's more creative opportunities there.
Yeah.
Like our Oblivion stream and all that. So a lot of stuff to look forward to, which is nice.
My name is Brendon Bigley. You can find me on the internet at Brendon Bigley.
Nothing. The cosmic opposite of yes and is just silence. My name's Stephen Hilger. You can find me at Stephen Hilger. Have a wonderful day.
Sorry, I was actually just thinking about how long it takes us to record a normal episode of this podcast and what it's going to be like to record the Goaty episode. So last year's Goaty episode, I think, took us literally the entire day to record. Like we started at like 10 a.m. and ended like the sun had gone down. It was like 6 or 7 p.m.
Halfway through, we got a pizza. And then sorry, that was terrible. Dude, it takes us forever to film the Goaty because every time we get hungry, we have to get a pizza. And then, go on a beer run with AJ. And I recommend beers that you can only get in the Midwest.
Anyway, this episode took us 4 hours to record. Just about.
This one today?
Yeah, we're at 3.5 hours. Yeah.
I guess there was a lot. We kept trying to start again and we kept goofing off in the break.
Yeah, we talked about High Fidelity for like an hour in the break.
Yeah. It was rough.
That movie doesn't hold up, friends.
It does not. Don't
read a book.
Or just read the book or just watch the Jack Black scenes, basically. Anyway, all that to say, thank you for listening. We will see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.
TWG.
Oh, shit. Well, all right.
TWG, the worst garbage, online.